We're going live. We are live. Are you live?
I'm alive.
I'm alive too, for now. But, you know, the coronavirus thing, you know, all of us might be gone soon. And then if we're not gone in like the next month or two, the world's going to be gone in like 10, 12 years, I think. That's what I've heard.
10 to 12 years, not 14 days, like I've been predicting recently.
Oh, 14 days the world's going to be gone?
Yeah.
Wow. Holy crap. That's
kidding.
Breaking news.
That's terrible, isn't it?
Hadn't heard that one.
Well, that's what happens when you've been listening to the news nonstop, because you're
I know, you want to,
junkie and you're like, oh my God, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Yeah. Hopefully this Angry Orchard is good. It's been in my fridge for, I don't even know.
Should be nice and cold.
It is cold. Good through May 2020. So, hey.
Good. Okay. So hello, everyone in the chat room. We are waiting for Rick. Let me go over here to see if he's tried to contact. The last thing that I saw from Rick said that
he's in the show notes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Did he put something in the APG crew thing too? I thought I saw
he did.
something.
5 o'clock.
Excellent.
It's 5:05, so you know.
Yeah, not bad. Okay,
Close.
Excellent. So we hope to see Miami Rick soon. And let's see, what else did we want to talk about? So, two-parter. Rick will be here. For those of you who are watching the stream live right now and after the fact, this here is Nick Camacho. You've heard his voice. He sent in a bunch of different audio feedback in the past before. You'll remember, what was it, last fall?
Last spring. Yeah.
Or last spring?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Was that long ago?
Yeah, almost a year.
Oh my gosh.
I see Rick trying to copy that StreamYard link, and that's not the way it works, right?
Oh, no. Yeah, so I was going to, Liz, I was going to tell you something. Don't put the whole, all those letters down, because that changes every week or every show that we do. Oh, you didn't? Okay. Okay. Do you read lips? No, I can't really.
It was.
It's like I'm gonna blow your head up. So let's see. How do we? If he's in the show notes, maybe we can type something in there.
Just start talking to him through the show notes.
Yeah, just start typing stuff in the show notes. Say, just put in StreamYard. Did I put that in there? Is that what you were saying, Liz?
Yeah,
I'm the one that put that stupid link in there. Oh, my bad. I need to fix that then. Hang on. I thought sometimes this happens. Well, people will do things and then forget that they're the ones that did it. Okay.
You did it a couple weeks ago. I haven't touched it. I think that's actually true, because I think I made the same mistake of trying to click on it one time. Oh,
so I was the problem. No, I mean, I probably was the problem, and I've been a problem for a lot of people a lot of years. Okay, let's see. Try that.
Oh, now you're still.
Huh? Oh, well, shoot. I can unlink this, I think.
I mean, like, just send him a text.
Yeah. Why don't you do that?
I will.
Leave it to Steph to come up with a practical solution to the problem. Are you doing it, or you want me to?
I'm sending it. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Robert. I don't normally see you on the live shows. Hello, Tanya. We're going to play part 2 today, guaranteed, unless the world comes to an end. Then all bets are off.
Of course, he actually has to read that text message. She has not.
Oh. Okay. Well, should I go back to my original plan of typing in the show notes?
I did type in the show notes. If you updated it, mine's there. Oh. He'd have to refresh it. Well, I can see
No,
what
at
you
the
were
very
typing.
top.
Oh,
put it at the
I
very
see it now. Okay.
I mean, in bold and underlined. Hold on, I can do something different here too. Watch this.
Rick. Perfect.
I mean, if you miss that, I can't help you.
I love that. What happens if you click on this? Oh, it just looks
Nothing.
like
It's not a. It's not a. It's
It
just
just looks-
underlined. I should probably underline it, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, oops.
That didn't work.
uh,
Steph,
sorry.
you have to retype the whole thing?
Yeah.
This is fun, huh?
I don't
Aren't
know
you
why it
glad?
doesn't cause a. Or I guess I have to do.
There's still no sign of him in the StreamYard back. What do we call this? The backwoods.
There we go.
Oh, let me see what you've done.
Backwoods. All right. So I fixed it. There, I fixed it.
Oh man. Let's see if he's trying to. Oh wait, here's a text.
That was Liz, I think.
Oh, just phone him. Yeah, I could. Yeah. Well, I'm using my phone for the hotspot though. I don't think I can do that.
Is there?
Oh, I see him. Oh,
There we go.
yeah,
Hey.
there he is.
Hey.
Sorry, it was my fault for putting that stupid link in there.
No problem. I was looking for the I clicked on the link. I was like, hey, am I the only one here?
I saw you doing that, and I was like, "Oh, I've made this mistake before."
Yeah.
Don't do
And
that.
when she made the mistake, I didn't realize the reason for that mistake was because of me. I thought that Liz had put that in there or something. It's just when it comes down to it, everything is my fault, and I take full responsibility. Sorry.
It's fault.
So, Liz wants me to ask you, and I agree. Is there a way? Well, I don't know. Do you have a desk lamp that you can put in front of your?
I do, and this is I've got one here, and it doesn't tilt or anything. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, the lighting conditions kind of suck in this room right now, and I'm kind of backlit a little bit, and this is the best I have to work with, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can.
Actually, that's
we can.
better.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is
Yeah.
better. Okay. Well, we'll come up with something here.
Yeah. It's only going to get worse as it gets darker outside. So
Fortunately, we've reached daylight savings, so hopefully, as long as we don't talk,
there you go.
talk
Yeah.
too much, we've got like 2 hours.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. What else are we going to do here? Okay. So the new mic's working good. Well,
Oh yeah, it's good. Good stuff. Does it sound good?
tap on it. Yep. That's it.
Excellent.
Thing. Wait. No, hang on.
What?
I don't think it is. Click on it again. Oh, it is. Okay.
Oh, good.
Good. Yeah, I think it sounds a lot better than last week.
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
Very good. So, did you get the? Were you able to? Oh, yeah, you were because you were in the show notes. Never mind. That was a dumb question. I'm
Got it
good
all.
at dumb questions.
Going through some of the notes here. Busy show, huh?
Yeah, we're not going to do all the news. We're going to do like the first three,
Okay.
and we're going to probably start talking a little bit about coronavirus in addition to those three items, and then the feedback will probably just knock out as many as we can, and then I'll probably save the plain tale for Saturday.
Okay.
I think that would be a good plan. Okay, let me get to my Evernote. Let's see, Rick. I don't think you have a way of recording from your end on your setup at this moment. So the Dr. Steph it probably doesn't matter.
I just opened Audio Hijack. Or
What?
whatever.
Tell me, what has it done this time?
Well, I never stopped it from the last time.
Don't send me that file.
You don't want that file?
Is there still room on your hard drive?
This is why my computer doesn't work.
I'm surprised that you're still here, that you were able to join us today.
My computer worked like
How many days is
better
that
than
been?
it. I don't know.
That was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
It's the last
It's like
5 days. it's been
127
recorded.
hours. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna delete that one
You probably should do
immediately.
that. before your computer just blows up.
It's like
It's gonna pack up and walk out the
yeah,
room.
it's like I'm done.
It's like
I can't
I'm
do this
done.
anymore.
Bye.
Like it's the last time I'll take this abuse from you. Oh, I can't even find that file, so whatever. It's working okay. I'm not going to mess with it.
Okay,
Let's just go
good
ahead
luck.
and hit record here. There you go.
All right.
I need a big sign that says
Oh, and
stop.
you know what? I just thought of something. What am I supposed to say for you, Nick?
I don't care.
Let's see. Got to talk about Betty's Biscuit Bomber.
Yeah.
That should be. And what's your official job title?
I'm a mechanical engineer.
Mechanical engineer. Living here in Wichita, the air capital. Mechanical engineer, Betsy's Biscuit Bomber pilot.
You should probably write that down
Well,
if you're going to say
pilot. You're the pilot now. We've just promoted you. Or do you think somebody would take umbrage if they were listening to our show?
Like somebody on our crew?
Yeah.
They're
never going to listen
They're
to
all
us.
old people that aren't into
Okay,
new media,
good.
so I think
We're
we're
good.
clear on that front.
Yeah, so you are now Betty.
you've been promoted.
Betsy's Biscuit Bomber
Congratulations.
pilot. Commander. No, I won't go that far.
No.
Okay. All right. And I'm gonna do the intro here on the video, but if you listen to the audio only podcast that will be released, who knows when, you'll hear the dulcet tones of Radio Roger, the New York City 1010 Wins professional radio broadcaster. But you're just gonna have to settle for me now. Sorry. Okay.
I think it'll work out fine.
All right, here we go. Boy, it's gonna be fun.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 416.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1518 in the Hyatt Regency in the air capital, Wichita, Kansas. Today's show is recorded on the 12th of March, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Get you right and it's flying.
You're not dancing. There we go.
The Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, an Antonov AN-72 sinks at the North Pole. An update on the My Cargo 747 that crashed at Bishkek. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, passing more gas. Oops. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 416 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast, and I'm Captain Jeff, your host. As I mentioned, I'm an airline pilot, a captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier based in the United States, and it's an aviation podcast. We talk about aviation news and cover your feedback as much as we can every week. And here to help me with all of that from her lakeside home in the Carolinas, doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial. Oh, yeah, that is your music. For a minute there, I thought I was playing Nick's music.
That's my music. Don't try to give
commercial
my music away to Nick. He can't have it.
Crap. Just right in the middle of that, I'm thinking, is that the right music? All right.
I think you should just leave that. That's fine.
Anyway,
how are you, Captain Jeff? Nope.
Here we go. From her lakeside home in the Carolinas, doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. I kind of like the first version of that, but I guess we're not going with that. I know.
Yeah, I don't know
Behind
what
the
you're
scenes
talking
stuff
about.
I'm giving away here. Yeah, glad to be here for this evening's show. Glad I could make it today. Wasn't sure what my schedule was really going to be like this week, but it worked out. So looking forward to a good one.
Very good. I am looking forward to it as well. High hopes, right?
Always.
Yeah. Also joining us from his mobile recording studio in Miami, Florida, massive watch wearer, gym rat, dream lifter driver, and lover of all things Boeing. It's Miami Rick.
Massive watch wearer, really?
Yeah.
Who wrote that?
It was not
Two
my
guesses.
idea. All I can say is it wasn't my idea. But we're waiting for you to give us the official version.
Yeah, I'll work on that. But I can, yeah, I have an idea or two. Came up with that. Anyway,
Hello.
guys, how are you guys doing? I'm happy to be back. Yeah, it was kind of a long day for me. Back to the sim, learning to get getting reacquainted with the 767. So it was a good day. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent.
Woo-hoo. Glad to see you
Hey.
here. Been a while.
Yay. I know.
Yeah, so you're getting reacquainted with the 767, and we're all getting reacquainted with you. Rick.
There you go.
Yeah.
But works both ways.
That's right. So I'm going to leave this music running because we also have a special guest in the mobile studio that I'm in Wichita. And let's see, we're going to say that you're a mechanical engineer because you really are, based here in the air capital, Wichita, Kansas. And you're the pilot of Betsy's Biscuit Bomber, right?
Yep.
Excellent. This is Nick Camacho.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
All right. That's it, huh?
It's going to be
It's a man of few words. I like
Yeah,
it.
man of few words.
Exactly.
But here we go.
You obviously have a wonderful economy with words.
Anyway, so we're going to talk more with Nick and find out much more than he's given us so far about what he does and has been doing this last year. But in the meantime, I think we should first start with heading over here to the news.
Stand by for news.
All right, the first item in the folder is this: accident. Gazpromovia AN-74 near the North Pole on the 4th of April 2015. Hard landing. Oh, that's been a while since they had this accident. It was on a polar expedition performing a flight from Murmansk, Russia to Borneo Ice Base in the North Pole. Made a hard landing at the Borneo Ice Base, which is 89 degrees latitude. That's pretty darn close to the 90-degree line, I guess, causing substantial structural damage to the main gear. The aircraft came to a stop and settled on its tail due to the gear damage. The occupants disembarked safely via ladders. Now, the update here that just came in, this is on the Aviation Herald on the, what day? It was like just recently here.
March 8th.
March 8th, thank you. Yeah, now I see it. Came to the attention of the Aviation Herald on March 8th, 2020. Attempts to repair the structural damage of the landing gear were underway on April 22nd, 2015, so not long after the incident or accident, when winds in excess of 30 meters per second, which is more than 58 knots, caused the aircraft to tip onto its nose, destroying the nose gear in addition to the right main gear collapse received on the 4th of April during the hard landing. The aircraft rolled onto its right side and received additional damage beyond repair. Repair attempts were aborted. On the 24th of April 2015, the aircraft owner Shar Incorporated Limited filed, I've never seen that before, an incorporation and a limited partnership, filed an insurance claim, which was disputed by the insurer. Anyway, here's the part that I want to talk about. The accident aircraft drifted with the ice flow to the west. So it was drifting off to the west.
It was
as the
heading
sun
west.
sets.
Yeah,
Yes.
heading west.
Yeah, literally. When in the night between July 26th and July 27th in 2015, the ice flow cracked and the aircraft sank into the waters of the Arctic Sea.
Oh,
Is there a 13 at all in that airplane's registration?
I did not see.
Good
No.
Lord.
Yeah, not a lot of good luck there. There's a picture, and we'll include this in the show notes, and you can see it. I guess this is before the high winds mangled the nose gear, because the nose gear looks pretty good in this picture.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, obviously, before it sank into the water.
To the bottom of the Arctic Sea. Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently they had to abort the investigation. The evidence is not there anymore.
Wow. That is, not good. And the meters per second on the wind there, that brings me back. So they do that in Russia still, and in China. So it's kind of interesting how you get your ATIS wind speed in meters per second. And when you first start, you first start doing it, you're like, oh, what? And then it's just
a lot of wind or not a lot of wind or
exactly. You go 5 meters per second. So you really have
how
to
much?
Exactly. They just double it. So 10 knots just about. So it tends to work.
So that's just a rule of thumb. Just double the thing.
Yeah, just double it. And then the interesting part is when they actually have you fly in meters, which they do that in not so much Russia anymore. Actually, not Russia at all. They do that in China. So you'll enter Chinese airspace and you fly around with this conversion table. So they'll assign you a flight level in meters, and you use that little chart to translate that into feet, and you actually fly around with an odd altitude in your remote control panel, or your
because you don't have the option to switch that to meters.
No,
anyway,
you can. There's an option to display meters in the altimeter, but you can't select meters on your autopilot system.
Gotcha.
So you have to fly with that little table around. But
Yeah.
But this is one unlucky airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it's your time, it's your time.
Exactly.
I was going to say we dealt with that too when we were over in Europe with the C-47, because they were using some meters, but they also did all their altitudes their altimeter settings in millibars in a couple of the countries over there.
Yeah, that's more usual. They do millibars. Now, you want something to really cook your bagel?
Maybe for you, Rick. It's a little more usual.
They'll oftentimes do something called QFE. So they'll reference altimeter setting to the actual elevation of the station. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So when you land, your altimeter will read 0, and that's kind of tricky sometimes, because we're also used to flying with reference to QNH, or local altimeter setting. So by the time you land, your altimeter shows mean sea level altitude. So, but QFE, I've never personally done it, but it's something that we train on and know about in case we ever get it.
I might be coming in below the 50% accuracy level at this point. So the words that are to follow may or may not be true, but I think I recall many years ago, American Airlines was one of the major U.S. legacy carriers here in the U.S. that used QFE for some time before they converted to the way everybody else does it here in the U.S.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Now, somebody out there, if you're an old pilot from American Airlines, let us know whether or not that is true or not.
Yeah,
because we need to keep it above the 50% as much as we can.
I'd be interested. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's really all we have to say about that.
I do want to say that's an interesting looking aircraft there as well. Does Antonov make anything that's not like interesting? In quotes?
No, they don't make everything they make is interesting.
Looking? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about Antonov in the feedback on this show. Hopefully, we'll get to it. Another kind of unusual Antonov, the 225 Mira, Mira.
Yeah, the dream.
The dream. And let's see. What was I going to say here? So I think Steph is referring to the fact that it's a twin jet engine aircraft. The jets are mounted on the high wing, and it almost looks like we were trying to decide, or we were wondering what the term was called, blown flaps or something like that.
Rick probably knows this. Upper surface blown.
Fill in
something.
the blank.
Yeah.
You're referring to
at
the
the upper surface blown lift and body. I think that's what it's called. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's basically what it does, right? The fact that the exhaust of the engine is on the upper surface of the wing, it actually increases lift, just by the sheer velocity of that exhaust air going, over the
it's
top
basically
of the wing.
like it's the same concept as vortex generators, right? You have more excited air going over the top of the airflow.
Exactly right. I mean, although vortex generators, they excite the air by creating a vortex, and this is just blowing air over the top of the wing, but it has the same exact effect. Yeah, I mean, these Russians are crafty.
Russians are what? Crafty. Okay, I'm sorry. You cut out right at the moment where the consonants came in, and I could have sworn you said something different, and I thought,
we're 2 for 2 now.
Now the Kremlin's going to be after us. Okay, I think it's best for us to move on if we value our lives.
Yes.
Moving on to item B. Was a crash. This happened in 2017, January 16th to be exact. A My Cargo Boeing 747-400 at Bishkek in Kazakhstan, I believe. Is that where the Bishkek airport is? Rick, do you remember?
Kazakhstan, yeah. Kazakhstan.
Okay.
I remember when this happened.
Yeah. Not that long ago, actually. And on March 3rd of this month, of this year, the MAK released their final report concluding the probable causes of the accident were the missing control of the crew over the aircraft position in relation to the glide slope during the automatic approach, conducted at night in weather conditions suitable for ICAO Category 2 landing, and as a result, the measures to perform a go-around not taken in due time, with the aircraft having a significant deviation from the established approach chart, which led to the controlled flight impact with terrain, CFIT, or CFIT, we like to say, at the distance of about 930 meters beyond the end of the active runway. And if you want to convert that to feet, I think you multiply by 5 and divide by 9 and add 32. Oh, wait, no, that's temperature. So that's about what, 3,000 feet beyond the end of the active runway?
That's a long ways.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a long ways.
Contributing factors were most probably, again, this is a Russian report, and we love the Russians.
I think this was translated from the Russian.
Translation, yeah. The insufficient pre-flight briefing of the flight crew members for the flight to Manas Aerodrome, Bishkek, regarding the approach charts. Did I say that right, Rick? Manas?
Manas, yeah, I'd say Manas.
Okay. As well as the non-optimal decisions taken by the crew when choosing the aircraft descent parameters, which led to the arrival at the established approach chart reference point at a considerably higher flight altitude. Lack of the crew.
That is key right there.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest.
Arriving higher, yeah.
The lack of the crew's effective measures to decrease the aircraft vertical position and its arrival at the established approach chart reference point, while the crew members were aware of the actual aircraft position being higher than required by the established chart. So in other words, they probably zoomed it down in a very high rate to try to get back on the appropriate glide path to the runway, I'm assuming. I don't know. Anyway, they have several other items here that they've listed in their final report. But I do know that Rick, you had some opinions about this and some comments to be made regarding this particular accident.
Yeah, I was, and the reason why I mentioned that the fact that they arrived high on the approach path was critical here is because we have to get a little bit into how a glide slope works. So we're talking about the fact that they were shooting an ILS approach and an instrument landing system approach. And the two main components of an ILS, you have your localizer, which gives you that lateral guidance, and you have the glide slope, which gives you the vertical guidance, right? That glide slope antenna usually sits in the first 1,500 to 3,000 feet of the runway, and that's going to give you about a 3-degree glide path, angle of descent down from your glide slope intercept altitude on the approach chart down to the runway, right? And basically the way a glide slope works is it sends out two overlapping lobes, right? One at 150 hertz and then the one on top of it at 90 hertz. And where these lobes overlap, that's called a null zone, right? So basically a glide slope receiver on the airplane the way it knows whether to fly up or fly down to keep you on that glide slope is based on whether it's receiving a predominantly a 150 hertz signal or a 90 hertz signal, right? So where those signals null out, like I said, where those kind of even out, where there's no predominance of one versus the other, that the aircraft interprets as being on a glide slope. The problem with these glide slopes is that there's also glide slopes known as false glide slopes, and these glide slopes happen about every 6 degrees. So if you look at it, you have a 3-degree glide slope that from the ground to the optimum angle. 3 degrees on top of that, you get to 6. At 6 degrees, you have no signal.
And the reason being is because, so if you're thinking about those false glide slopes, you got then you have 150 and 90 as opposed to the other way around. So you actually get a flag there that there's no signal, correct?
Exactly right. And so basically the you're at the end of the scale for those particular lobes. So the receiver is not receiving anything, but nothing whatsoever. And so that happens at that 6 degree mark. So you end that glide slope there, then you're going to get another glide slope at 9 degrees. So you're going to get one lobe at 90, one lobe at 150, a null zone at 9 degrees, right? And then the airplane, all it knows is that it's entered a null zone. So it's going to interpret that as being on glide slope. And the problem with being high on the approach and not intercepting your proper glide slope at the published altitude is that you can in fact intercept one of these false glide slopes. Now, the airplane doesn't know any better. They were going to conduct a Category 2 approach, which is usually leads to an autoland. Since the glide slope, quote unquote, everything checked out as far as what needed to be there for the autopilot to shoot that automatic approach. All the systems, engaged properly. All the fail safes, did what they had to do, and the system worked the way it had to. So the airplane, it just operated normally, albeit on a 9 degree glide slope. Now, the only way to know that you're on a 9 degree glide slope is by taking a look at your rate of descent, your closure rate to the ground, because usually on a 3 degree glide, if you take your ground speed and multiply times 5, that'll give you, what your rate of descent is. So take into account 150 knots over the ground times 5, it's about 750, 800 feet a minute. Right. So that's on a 3 degree glide. If you do that on a 9 degree glide, all of a sudden you're not descending at 800 feet a minute. You're descending at 12, 13, 1400 feet a minute, but you're showing like you're on glide slope. So you're going, the hell is going on?
I mean, the thing that might come to mind at that point for people that have been flying ILS approaches for a long time is that I must have one heck of a tailwind because we have a very high rate of descent. But there are ways to determine whether or not you have a big tailwind or not. And that should have been something that was noticed by the crew, right?
Exactly right. And here's where another fail-safe comes when it comes to ILSs. Along that lateral track towards the runway, you have what are called marker beacons, right? And these marker beacons are going to, as I said, be placed along the lateral track to the runway. There's usually 3 of them. You have an outer, a middle, and an inner, right? And the way we cross-check what your altitude should be in relationship to the runway is by crossing these marker beacons at a published altitude, right? So by the time you cross that beacon, you should be at a certain altitude. You cross-check that with your altimeter, and those altitudes should match. And if they don't, there's something going on there. Now, towards the end of this accident flight, the autopilot was unable to maintain that descent rate, and so it noticed based on its rate of descent that yes, I'm on glide slope, but this rate of descent is too high, and so it kicked itself off. So the vertical mode, the mode that's tracking the glide slope, went into what's called an inertial mode. So it is no longer tracking a glide slope. It is now tracking what it believes should be a 3 degree glide. And the way the pilots know this is by the automatic flight director system drawing a line through the glide slope mode, letting the pilot know that this is no longer an active autopilot mode. And all the signs were there, but as we all know, hindsight's 2020. They got too low, and by the time it was, they should have gone around. They didn't. And I can tell you from experience, having a 747 go around at low altitude, all that mass, that energy is not something that happens instantly. And so we all know, what happened afterwards, which is sad. Yeah.
Very sad. Yeah, they crashed and there was some kind of a village, I think, at the end of that runway and they killed a bunch of people on the ground, I think.
Yeah, and I tell you, I mean, that's the exact type of flights I used to do. Just taking off from Hong Kong, doing a tech stop. Ours, we flew into Bishkek a couple of times. I did, I think, twice or three times. But our usual stopover on the way to either Istanbul or Amsterdam or Liège was usually Almaty in old Kazakhstan as well. But it's the same thing. You fly for a couple of hours and you land, you hope to refuel, take back off, and you never get there. So it's I've been there.
So,
and it hits pretty close to home.
So when the autoflight system reverts to this non-active glide slope mode, what did you call that mode again?
Inertial mode.
Okay, so
it's an inertial mode. So it's basically it's inertial. Some autopilot flight director systems call it inertial. Other call it ballistic. So it's just basically holding a trajectory.
Okay.
Instead of tracking something.
So the autopilot's still controlling the airplane at that point.
Oh yeah.
It's just basically the rate of descent or the 3 degrees that it's supposed to be following. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Kind of.
So yeah, exactly. So but this rate of descent is not being controlled by an outside signal,
right?
But by what the system thinks it should be, and that's why the mode and the autopilot and on your primary flight display, the glide slope mode no longer says. Well, it says GS for glide slope, but now it has a line across it, letting the pilot know that the mode is degraded, and it's not actually tracking a glide slope.
So it's kind of sort of like a flag, like, hey,
it should be something that you recognize.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky thing. It can't be a flag because it is tracking a glide slope.
Okay.
So the only way to really call that attention, to call your attention, is by drawing that line across it.
Gotcha.
So
okay. When you were mentioning altitudes at certain points laterally, I always think of when I brief the ILS approach, I always talk about the glide slope intercept altitude. And if that is different than the point at which you fly over the outer marker, it's called the glide slope check altitude, or at least that's what I call it. And that's always published right on the profile view of the approach plate here. And in this case, I just pulled up the ILS to runway 1 right, which is the approach that we flew coming in today to Wichita. And the glide slope intercept is 2,700. And then just a little bit further down, as you start down the glide slope, when you cross over, he called it PIC, I think, or something like that, but it looks like Piche to me, Piche, 2615. So if you're on the glide slope and you're crossing over that marker and you see 2615 on your altimeter, you're on a good glide slope.
Hey, exactly. Not only that, but as part of your in your audio select panel, you can actually select to turn marker beacons on. So you turn that marker beacon on and you turn the volume up just enough so you can hear it. So it will emit a very specific sound, letting you know that you're about to pass or fly over it. And so when it gets the loudest, you look down and you're supposed to cross check your altitude then. And then the other thing, especially when you're flying category 2, category 3 operations, low visibility autoland type operations, never, ever, ever intercept a glide slope from above, because this can happen. So the idea here is to get to your, published, either your published glide slope intercept altitude or the lowest altitude that ATC gives you, and always intercept from below, always, because this will keep you from running into stuff like this.
So speaking of sounds, Captain Al would like to know, on Boeings, do you get an aural alert for such scenarios, like where you have the not the flag but the bar through the glide slope that you're talking about?
Yeah. So there's 4 levels of I guess alerts on Boeings, and specifically the 747's got 4 types. So you got warning, which is the highest priority or hierarchy of them. So say, for example, an autopilot disconnects. It's a very, very distinctive wailer. Then you get cautions, which is something like this, or your auto throttle disconnecting, or something that's not as important as an autopilot disconnecting. So you'll get a beeper, and you get an advisory also, which is also a kind of something that's calling your attention but doesn't have a specific sound to it. And then you get a memo, which is something like, seatbelts on or no smoking on type of stuff. But the ones that are associated with actual, sounds are warnings and cautions. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One more thing before we move on. Tim Needham has set us straight that Bishkek is in Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan. There we go.
Not
Aha.
Kazakhstan. Love that.
Almaty's in Kazakhstan. Okay.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Tim. We've just reached the 50% level.
Aha.
We're back.
We got it.
Thanks, Tim.
Yes. All right. That's why we count on our APG community so much.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to say before we move on to the next item in the news folder?
No, I think that one's pretty set.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Item C, veteran B747-200, an older version of the 7.4 at Abuja. How did I do? Did I do that right? Abuja. Dang it. All right. Below the 50% level. Overran, displaced runway end, and collided with trucks. Another overrun with a 747. This occurred pretty recently. Well, no, I take that back. We have a new update on it. It happened in 2013, before this one that we just talked about. But we have an update on Monday, March 9th. So let's see. Let me just tell you again, remind you what happened here. A veteran airlines Boeing 747-200 freighter on behalf of Saudi Arabian Airlines, registration Echo Kilo 74798, performing flight 6814 from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia to Abuja, Nigeria.
Fun place.
Landed on Abuja's runway 04 at about 2200 local time, night, dark, but overran the displaced runway end. I had to correct that. Collided with a number of building machines and trucks, veered right off the runway, came to a stop with all gear off the runway, and the building equipment wedged under its right-hand wing and engine. The equipment was totaled. The aircraft received substantial damage to the right-hand wing and engines number 3 and 4, as well as even more substantial damage to the left-hand wing with engine number 2, the inboard left engine, detached from the engine pylon, and engine 1 damaged. There are traces of a brief fire where the number 2 engine broke off the engine pylon, severing supply lines. And there were no injuries, according to the Nigeria Transport Ministry, or fatalities. And the occurrence has not been a crash other than Nigerian media reported. I'm not sure I understand what that sentence means. Do you? Anybody? Any ideas?
They're calling it just an incident and not
an incident.
I mean, it sounds like a crash.
Yeah, it does.
There's a lot of exactly.
So on March 9th, the Nigeria's AIB Accident Investigation Board released an interim statement. This happened in when?
2013.
2013, yeah.
Still working on those interim updates.
Gosh.
We're working towards that final report.
Okay. They're even worse than we are, I think. Reporting the draft final report has been completed and has been sent out for comments. During the landing roll, Tower called the aircraft to hold short. The aircraft turned to the right to avoid the displaced threshold via exit A3. The aircraft veered off to the left of the exit and impacted some construction equipment parked on the side of the runway. The aircraft came to a final stop parallel and to the right of runway 4 on a grass verge with the fuselage and nose wheel between the construction equipment. 6 crew members evacuated the aircraft unhurt. And there were NOTAMs at the time that indicated that there were some men and equipment and construction equipment as such on the runway or near the runway, and that let's see, trying to find the actual NOTAM that, well, maybe not. But then we have the NOTAMs in here if you want to read them. Anything significant there? I'm not sure. The reason why I'm kind of hesitant here, I don't know if these NOTAMs were from after the accident or before.
It says current NOTAMs.
Oh, from 2013.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I think that was after the fact, actually. September of 2013. And this happened.
Yes, I think it's all the NOTAMs that they created after this occurred.
Okay. Anyway, no METARs are available. The local weather station reported at 1900 local time, visibility above 10 kilometers, 31 degrees Celsius, dew point 21, with winds from the south-southwest at 6 knots. And anyway, they have some pictures here of the airplane and the building equipment. Like heavy. What would you call these? Heavy equipment
Like a
machines.
backhoe and a
Yeah. Let me tell you. Before we go on there, let me tell you about no METARs available when you fly into Africa.
Okay. That's
Is
standard.
that a common occurrence?
So I tell you, flying from, I don't know, what we would do quite a bit. We do Amsterdam to Nairobi, sometimes down in Kenya, or Lagos in Nigeria, any of these places. Port Harcourt as well. But anyway, it's very uneventful until you get to about 100 miles south of the Cairo FIR, over Egypt, if you're entering through that side. And then after that, it is better really to fly at night for the cruise portion of it, for the simple reason that a lot of these people down there, they don't operate transponders and they lie about where they are.
Good.
So
helpful things for situational awareness.
Exactly right. And it only gets trickier as you're coming into land, because as we see here, 8 times out of 10, a lot of these airports, not so much the international ones. Nairobi's quite all right. Lagos is fine, but you get to the smaller airports, Port Harcourt. I think some of these airports.
We've heard some stories from Nick about that.
Oh man! Oh, I tell you, and
Lagos in particular.
Yeah, you don't have you might have a METAR, but it's hours old, and so what we used to do is we used to come in, oftentimes when the visibility was fine, at pattern altitude, and kind of overfly the thing, and literally do a low pass. Not only because we want to see what the heck the wind is doing,
see what the runway looks like,
but also to make sure that there's no equipment on the runway because of stuff exactly like this. So it's if you really want to get good at thinking 12 steps ahead, fly heavy into Africa, because it really puts things in perspective. Like you come back to the States and you fly stateside, and everything is given to you and everything is there, and every approach is an ILS, and everything is you have tons of alternates all the way around you. I'll tell you, that's one of the things that I'm not going to miss, having to kind of figure out what to do on your own.
You're really on your own.
You really are. So I feel for these guys.
Captain Al in our chat room here says, sounds like Africa. I once went around because of wind shear. Second approach, ATC said, quote, caution, wind shear in progress.
Well, Captain Al was like, yeah, no ass word.
That's scary.
Anyway,
very much so. So yeah, just thought that was an interesting thing. But you got to look at the show notes and see the pictures of the this heavy duty equipment and the damage it did to the
excavators and
jet.
trucks and things. And
but you know what? At least it was on landing and not on takeoff, like that.
That's true.
Like that Singapore 74, which I think that was the first hull loss of a Dash 400.
Wow,
that was bad. Yeah, but yeah.
All right. Well, we have some other news items that we're going to continue. We're going to cover those on Saturday. This is a 2-part show, by the way, and we're recording the first part on a Thursday evening, and then Saturday morning we'll cover part 2. So with that, I think that we are going to go ahead and get to the part of the show which I really enjoy, and that's our chance to get to know each other. Oh, you know what we should do, though, before we do that? Something that's occurring right now as we speak. We're living it when we're recording the show in 2020 in early March, and that is this little pesky virus, this coronavirus.
I feel like this is going to just be part of our getting to know you at this point. Like, what have you been up to? Everything I'm trying to do is being canceled. Why? Because coronavirus. So.
Yeah, things are really kind of crazy all of a sudden. All kinds of things being canceled. I don't know what's specifically is going on in other parts of the world, but here in the U.S., they've decided basically to shut down everything. Like, what did the NCAA finally just say?
Everything is canceled. March Madness is canceled. NBA games are canceled. NHL's they're all suspended for the rest of the season. All kinds of stuff. So maybe we should back up just a little bit. So in case you're either listening to this well after the fact, if you're one of those folks who joins 200 episodes from now and you have APG syndrome and you have to come back and listen to all these episodes, we'll just remind you what was happening in early 2020. So late 2019, early 2020, everyone listening now is well familiar with coronavirus, this novel virus that has emerged out of Wuhan area of China. At this point has basically spread to most corners of the globe. That's for the flat earthers. So your map is square, all the corners.
What's a globe?
This thing over here.
Oh,
all
that
corners.
accurate depiction of
From
of our
edge to
planet.
edge.
From edge to edge. And it's definitely not something to take lightly. At first it was a little unclear. We were getting some pretty serious reports out of China in terms of the measures they were having to take in order to try to contain it and treat people, and the seriousness of the symptoms and the fatality rate, the mortality rate with the virus was exceptionally high. So what this virus does, it basically causes, for some folks, very severe respiratory problems, to the point where you can have respiratory failure. You may need to be intubated on a ventilator, artificial breathing for you, if you have severe response or reaction to the virus. Now, those who are young typically have less of a severe response. In fact, for most children, folks under the age of 10, in part because a lot of other viruses that we get when we're kids are caused by coronaviruses, the same family of virus. There's some thought that there's some shared immunity, or at least weak immunity. So if you've had a recent illness with a coronavirus that is more common, less severe, perhaps that helps you out if you're exposed to this coronavirus. For those of us who are adults, haven't been exposed to a coronavirus or haven't had an illness with a coronavirus for a long time, it's more likely that you're going to have a more severe illness. And that goes up exponentially if you are above the age of 60. For every 10 years that it goes up, it really increases. Sorry, Jeff. I see you making a face there.
Might be one of my last shows.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
Appreciate
Or
it.
if you have other health problems, so diabetes, heart disease, if you're immunocompromised, all kinds of things. If you have previous respiratory illnesses, history of that type of thing going on. And it's relatively, on the spectrum of things, you look at different types of illnesses. So something like measles is highly contagious. Chickenpox is highly contagious. You look at other things that are so you have that on one axis. And then on the other axis, you have things that are very lethal. So something like Ebola virus, which is very lethal, but not very contagious. This kind of falls somewhere into that middle category where it's problematic in terms of how contagious it is and in terms of how severe it can be. And because no one's ever had it before, everyone's susceptible to getting it potentially if you come in contact with it and getting symptoms. So most recently, if you go beyond China, beyond Asia, so South Korea's had a lot of cases. They've done a lot of testing. Other places, Singapore, Hong Kong, have done a lot to contain this because they kind of learned some lessons from SARS and other things, swine flu, things like that, back a decade ago. Had more plans in place. But then as the virus kind of made its way around the world into Europe, Italy in particular right now has had quite a bit of an issue with it. Basically what's happening is the people who are ill and severely ill are overwhelming the healthcare systems. So there's not enough beds for these folks who are sick. If you're severely ill, if you need to be intubated on a ventilator, you may not have space in a hospital to get that treatment that you need. So the concern really now is to try to socially isolate. You don't want to come in contact with folks who may be sick. We know that this spreads very easily in large gatherings, in large groups of people. So that's why you're seeing all these cancellations. You're seeing cancellations of big sporting events. You're seeing cancellations of conferences. People are being asked to work from home. All kinds of stuff is going on. So that kind of brings us up to where we are today.
So I have a question regarding that. The last thing you just said, Steph. So the sporting events and such is the primary vehicle for transferring the disease from one to another, like sneezing, coughing?
Yes. So good question. So this is basically droplet transmission. So if someone sneezes or coughs and they are ill with this virus, they can spread it to you. You basically need to be within relatively close proximity to someone, generally within 6 feet. But there is some concern that perhaps it can be a little bit more of an airborne disease in certain circumstances. So yeah, it's basically trying to keep your distance from folks who might be sick. And then, basic hygiene stuff. So wash your hands. We know that regular soap, alcohol-based gel sanitizers that are greater than 60% alcohol will kill this virus. And then avoid touching your face and things like that.
So I have a question too. So what causes one strand to mutate into this other lethal strand? Like,
So that's a good question. I've looked at a couple of things in terms of where this virus may have originated from. There's some thought that perhaps it was, let me get back to I do have some notes on this actually. I'm not going to be able to find where I had that. But basically, is there a question that it came from some other species? Was there a reservoir somewhere out there, like in bats or something, and it just changed enough that it was finally able to be something that can infect humans as opposed to just some other species? That's a possibility. We don't actually know. So, or did it come from a different coronavirus that somehow mutated? So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, because I tell you, a lot of these, I can see how this would originate in some of these places because having been to some of these, food markets and especially in inland China, of all places, the further inland you go, the more, I guess, the less touristy it gets, and you see things that you wouldn't otherwise see in the more, westernized parts of China.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And there's certainly around the world, different customs, different levels of sanitary practices, hygiene practices. There's different culinary practices, in terms of things that might be being consumed, the way that food is handled, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So just my 2 cents on coronavirus so far. But no, it's concerning. It's definitely, as we know more and more about it, I think we become rightfully more and more concerned about it. And it's at least for those of us here in the United States, it is definitely here. There is definitely ongoing active community spread and transmission of it. So not a reason to panic necessarily, but use good sense, use caution.
And it's having a huge effect on aviation, especially the airline industry.
Yeah,
but I
we'd
guess
be kind of remiss if we didn't talk about that a little bit, I suppose, because there's been all kinds of, if you want to jump into that part of it.
Well, Acme international flights have been dramatically reduced, and even some of the domestic flying was reading a menu. I was reading a menu the other day, but it has nothing to do with this. A memo regarding cutting down capacity in the domestic system as well. I think the figure was something close to 15%.
I think I saw anywhere between 7.5% and 15%, depending on the airline. There were different figures from different airlines.
For me and Dana, for Dana and I should say, no, for Dana and me, we have to bid for our schedules month to month, and so the bidding period for next month just closed yesterday, and a memo came out saying that there would be reduced flying, but they're not going to touch anything as far as the trips as they are already crafted and set. Until after the awards are given, and then they're going to start making adjustments. So it's going to be interesting to see, how that's going to affect Dana and I in particular. And that's about all I have to say about that.
No, and it's interesting to kind of contrast that with the freight world a little bit, because while passenger carriers are obviously getting hit hard because of this, coronavirus, on the freight side of things, actually things are looking up. The price per kilo has shot up dramatically in anticipation of this whole thing, passing, which is hopefully going to happen soon. And then the supply chains being reestablished. Just my phone just keeps going off with, overtime trips of all sorts, for both the 747 and 767.
And you can't do them, can you?
Wait. I mean, no, exactly. I can't. And I'm stuck in school. No, but I'm saying it's interesting how resilient really the freight industry is. Where if things still need to get from A to B, and so but I know it's going to pass, and it's just what it is. I think it's a self-direction, and I think it's a cycle, and I think we'll be back to normal here hopefully soon.
Yeah, we have to, psychologically, emotionally, have to be as positive as we can in this. And I think that you would agree, Steph, that, if you are ill, that having a good positive mindset does have some effect in weathering these kind of things as well, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
I don't think panic is a particularly good mindset to have. I think being rightfully concerned and taking appropriate precautions is a good mindset to have. Um, we see a lot of crazy things going on in terms of people panic buying all kinds of stuff. I don't understand the toilet paper particularly, even if you're going to be self-quarantined at home for
That's right.
2
Remind me
weeks.
to steal the
Get the rest of
toilet
the
paper here and
paper.
there.
I just
Yeah.
am not
Yeah.
sure what you're going to do with all that toilet paper.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't get that either.
I don't understand that, to be honest. Hand sanitizer, that's important, but like reasonable amounts. I think if you do, so here's the other tricky thing too. Up until probably this week, it's been fairly difficult to get tested for coronavirus, COVID-19 here in the States. That is changing. But if you are sick and you suspect that it may, and if it's respiratory stuff in particular, if you have a cough, if you're having trouble breathing, if you have a fever, those are the 3 main symptoms of it. Do what you can to get yourself tested, and don't hesitate to self isolate or self quarantine. Don't go into work if you're sick. Don't spread it to other people, because you yourself might not have a particularly severe illness from it, but you could easily spread it to someone who is immune compromised, who's older, who's in a high risk population for having a very severe illness.
Hey, Dr. Steph, what was the cause of the testing issues? Was that we had to new testing?
Well, so it's
for this new virus.
Yeah, there's been testing out there, and certainly other countries have done a very good job of just pretty immediately, as soon as they had a test available, producing lots and lots of tests and being able to test for it. I'm not involved in that side of healthcare or medicine, but my understanding is that that's not particularly difficult to do. It had more to do with certifying the tests here and making sure that we were testing for the correct things, and having some of those safety measures in place is my understanding of it, as far as I know. Having all of that coming through the CDC, and then having other lab companies, commercial lab companies like LabCorp and Quest, being able to verify that their tests were appropriate to use. So, as far as I know, that's what it was.
Okay. Well, I'm sure this will not be the last time that we talk about this virus and its effects on everything.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go on to something more pleasant. Why not? Huh? Training. Rick, how's it been going for you?
Training's good. So today we did, it was the, so to break up simulator training, you first go through a flight training device. It used to be back in the day that you would, go to the actual simulator and do what's called fixed space simulator sessions, which is basically just using the flight deck as a procedures trainer, the simulator as a procedures trainer to kind of, get an idea where the switches, the buttons are, the I guess the geography of the whole thing, kind of get situated, and then start working out procedures and flows, because there's throughout every portion of the flight, there are certain things that need to be done in a certain order to have the flight work out the way it should. And so there's a pre-flight flow, there's a before taxi flow, before takeoff flow, an after takeoff flow, a descent flow, approach flow, all that stuff. So the first couple of sessions you do that. We no longer do that in a fixed space sim, really, because of the demand for simulators right now is so high, and the fact that there's
cost.
Well, not only that, cost as well, but it's also the fact that people need to get current. And they, it's not only us using these simulators, even though we own them. It's also other airlines that we rent time on these simulators to. And so we'll try to break that up and use a procedures trainer at the schoolhouse here, and then go through this procedures here. And this procedures trainer is really cool because it's basically the flight deck. And I think I posted a picture or two on Twitter there. And the actual flight deck, it's comprised of a set of flat screens, touch screens, that you can actually manipulate and move around and stuff. And on the side of each main panel there, you have a smaller, maybe 17-inch panel that breaks down the system, so you can select whatever system you want and see how the system behaves based on your input on the FTD. So we did that for about a week and a half. 8 sessions of that, and then now starting today we began the actual full motion simulator part of it. So got in and did, you know, just basic air work, steep turns, stalls, some visual traffic patterns there to get reacquainted with the plane. And then for my partner today, it was, you know, his first time flying the 767, and it's interesting how coming from the 747 to the 767, where you sit so much lower, you know, the first landing or two are a little tricky because you're so used to flaring at about, you know, 60 to 50 feet, where the 767 you flare it at 20, you know, so you kind of have to fight the urge of flaring early, because if you do, then you find yourself floating down the runway. So today was all about, you know, getting reacquainted with the jet. And so hopefully in the next just under 3 weeks we'll all be done here. But throughout the full motion part, we'll run through, you know, every possible scenario you can think of, you know, engine failures, hydraulic failures, electrical failures, and we're also training in a passenger environment, because not only do we operate freighter 76s but also passenger 76s. And in contrast, you know, if you compare the passenger and the freight operation, passenger operation is a lot more complex because you have a lot, you know, many more variables that the freighters don't have, you know, mainly 230 people sitting in the back, and each one of them is a variable. So by incorporating or by you know, putting that chip in your head from the get-go, it makes it easier once you know, hit the line and have to do these passenger flights, which for me is going to be, you know, a first for you know, it's been a while since I've actually flown passengers, so I'm looking forward to it.
And are those mostly military charters?
Yeah, well, military charters and a lot of sports teams, although I don't see that happening.
Nope. Yeah. It's going to be a little while.
It's going to be a little while.
It's going to be a few months.
Yeah. But yeah, it's mostly military charters, yeah, for to the Middle East, and then the Southeast Asian and sorts. So
cool.
Yeah.
All righty. Steph, how about you? What you been up to?
So I had a nice, relaxing weekend last weekend. I didn't do much of anything. I got caught up on a lot of sleep because after my little England excursion last week, in the middle of the week, I was feeling a little tired at the end of the week.
What? You?
Yeah, I know, right? Strange.
Little jet lag?
Well, no, it wasn't jet lag. It was just more sleep deprivation, fatigue. It was more fatigue than anything. So a couple nights of a nice, like, I had things on the list to do, and then I was like, nah, I'm just going to catch up on sleep and call it good. Because I thought this upcoming weekend was supposed to be another kind of action-packed weekend. I'm supposed to be in New York City this weekend. I'm supposed to be running a half marathon this weekend. That has been canceled. And we talked a little bit on the last show about doing a meetup with Tanya and Dave and them on Sunday. As of right now, we're still planning on that. But we'll see. It's kind of a fluid situation. So, good chance I'll probably still be in New York City this weekend for the weekend, just to see some friends and do some low-key stuff. And there won't be a race involved, but I'll probably still do a few miles through Central Park, because that's always a great place to go running. And we'll see.
All right. And
as long as I have a flight to take, I think I'll be there. But
information for the community to figure out whether or not there's
it will be on Slack.
Okay.
Yeah. Tanya is in charge of that.
Tanya says meetup is on so far. All right. Well, fingers crossed. Hopefully you'll be able to do that and see some folks up there in New York.
Exactly.
All right.
That's about it. So otherwise it's just been work. It's been kind of hit or miss at work. Couple days this week have been kind of slow. Today was relatively busy. Work, schedule, work. Exactly. I don't think anyone in the Charlotte area is working from home yet, because traffic has been just as horrible as usual. So we'll see if that changes over the next few weeks or not too.
The only sane people on earth in Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. They're ignoring all this stuff.
Yeah. I don't know about sane. They're just moving on with their lives. Like nothing's going on.
Yeah. All right. So I mentioned that we have Nick Camacho here, and you recognize his name because last year, I thought it was like last fall, but he said, no, it was like last spring. I went, wow, this being old, really, it's amazing how quickly time flies. What year is this?
Right.
So in 2019, last year, you told us all about the upcoming event of the the organization that you fly with, the Betsy's Biscuit Bomber, and it's a converted DC-3 to a C-47, or
It's actually a C-47.
okay, it is
Started as a C-47,
Okay.
never went to civilian service.
okay. And when Nick was where you flew over to the eastern U.S. and did some air shows and that kind of thing,
Yep.
right? And then you ended up flying. Well, I'll let you tell people what you did.
Yeah, so the airplane's based in California. I was involved with moving the airplane from California to Connecticut, and then I kind of hopped off in Connecticut and let some of the other crew fly the airplane over the water. And then about a week later, I flew over to London and reconnected with the crew in the airplane. Did a bunch of flying in Europe for about 2.5 weeks. Started at Duxford, flew around England, flew in France, flew in Germany, and then I came back home. And I got to do a couple of cool things while I was over there. I had a couple of goals that I managed to hit, and one was to log time in all 3 countries while I was over there. So I did manage to do that. So I've now got C-47 time out of Duxford, out of Caen in France, and then I flew a leg from Wiesbaden, Germany, over to Schoenhagen, which is in kind of South Berlin. And then the other thing I did was there's a flying group in Cambridge called the Cambridge Flyers Group, and that's actually the organization that my dad soloed with when he was learning to fly in 1964 in the
That's cool.
Air Force. And they still have one of the Tiger Moths that he soloed in. And so while we were out there, me and my brother and him peeled off, and all 3 of us went and got to fly that airplane. And it was, I had done the math, I guess, 55 years after he first soloed it. That
Wow.
we went back and flew it. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it. And then Nick at some point met up with you and took some great photos.
Yep.
of the-
Nick, Captain Nick came down to Duxford and met up with us. And we were going to try to get him up in the airplane with us, but the weather wasn't great. And we were doing a bunch of jump operations there. And so that didn't end up working out, but did get to chat with him for a while. And he took some pictures and had a lot of fun with him.
Yeah, some amazing pictures.
Yep.
We'll try to remember to put those in the show notes so you can look at those again.
So Nick, quick question: How do you stay current in that thing? I mean, because obviously it's above 12.5, right? Above 12,500. So you need a type rating for it. So how does the training work for that? The initial training, or in the transition, and then the currency.
So the PICs don't have any actual paper requirements to go. Like, they don't have to do it other than just the regular currency requirements. As a SIC, I have to do the full 6155 requirements. So I have to sit down with our chief pilot and do all the emergency procedures and go through all the ground school and then do, usually we combine that all into, we have a flying season. And so we start flying in April and basically fly through October. And so usually for currency, basically all we're doing is we're just coming out of a maintenance cycle. And so then we get everybody together at the beginning of the year, and we'll do basically a day of flying where we get the chief pilot gets everybody together. We do our ground school in the morning, and then we just go up and do hops in the airplane.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh wow. Okay. And then the initial training, I guess because obviously DC-3 C-47 is just before simulators and all that stuff. So you actually have to do it on the plane, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so my dad has a Luscombe, so that's what I've been flying a lot. So like you were talking about the flaring issue between a 747 and a 767.
Yeah.
I was going from an airplane where I was flaring like 5 to 6 feet off the ground to an airplane where I was flaring like 20 feet to 25 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
So it felt like I put the struts through the wings a couple of times when I first started.
It's a weird, it's a weird feeling, huh?
Yeah.
It's like
definitely.
the perspective of it, is just it's weird. I know.
Yep. And then, there's just a lot of unique handling characteristics of the airplane, especially going from a smaller airplane. Some of our pilots are airline guys, so they don't struggle with the same things that I struggle with. Like the things I struggle with on that airplane are trying to make sure that I'm not hitting the wingtip on things, because the wingtip is 47 feet away from where I'm sitting, and I'm not used to that. Another thing that's a little weird with the airplane is it's a tailwheel airplane. It's a free castering lockable tailwheel, but with it being a twin engine airplane and a single tail, you don't really have any directional control until you get up to about 20 or 25 miles an hour. So, I'm used to putting the tail up in a tail dragger fairly early on in the takeoff roll. You have to keep the tail down in this airplane. Otherwise the tail comes up and you really have no directional control.
That was gonna be my next question, because it's funny that you mentioned that, because I not too long ago I read a book called Tales from Corrosion Corner, which I don't know if you know about it, or I'm sure the folks on the chat room know about it. It's basically a book that details the I guess the transition from old prop liners to the early jetliners, the freighters here in Miami, and a lot of those early cargo freighters, freighter airline operators used, surplus C-47s, DC-3s, and they really break down the method of the takeoff, the cruise, how it cruises, how it lands, the fact that you don't have counter rotating propellers, so you have to deal with a critical engine, that kind of stuff. So it's and I've never flown a twin prop other than a Seminole when I got my multi-engine rating. So that's something that I really know nothing about, and I find absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's certainly a unique experience, and the only struggle for us when I started flying it 4 or 5 years ago, it was hard to keep the airplane flying enough and have the funding to keep the airplane flying enough to have everybody really current. But as we've kind of grown our organization, we've been able to do a lot better job of doing the currency flying and getting more people typed in the airplane, and then as we start typing people in the airplane, the knowledge base within our pilot group grows, and we get everybody gets a lot more comfortable in the airplane.
Absolutely.
Sure. Makes good sense.
Yeah.
Do you do any flying here in Wichita?
Yeah, I do. So my dad has the Luscombe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That I mentioned. And then I have a Beach Debonair, which is like an early straight tail Bonanza.
Yeah. Nice.
I bought that to get my instrument rating, and got about halfway through my instrument rating. And then I took it apart about 2 months ago to redo the panel. So before I started my project, it had a couple of old Navcom radios, a DG with no bug, and regular CDI. So it was like
stuff that Captain Nick flies around with.
MV-88 style, instrumentation. No, it was like 1970s instrumentation. And so we're redoing the panel. We're putting a electronic HSI, an EFIS in it, and then a WASP navigator.
Oh, nice.
So it should be a pretty nice airplane to fly.
But,
we're done with it.
But since you're doing all that, you had to put your IFR
instrument rating on hold.
Yeah.
But once the problem that we were running into was that the airport that I fly out of only has a RNAV approach or a GPS approach. So we couldn't really go practice in any sort of actual, because it'd be difficult to get back in if we had to, or if the ceilings came down or anything. So now I'll be able to actually use the airplane as an instrument airplane.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
What was the time frame on doing all of that work? Was it pretty quick, or?
So I last flew the airplane on January 15th, and I had my initial goal was to have the airplane flying by March 1st. And the problem is it's a 60-year-old airplane. So as I kept taking things apart, I was like, oh, I should fix that. That's not right. I'm in here. So I've had a little bit of scope creep, but I'm hoping that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll have the airplane back going again.
You found a creep in your,
yeah.
Oh, now what is it you just said?
Scope creep. So
Scope
like
creep.
the amount of work that I had
The,
done
the
Oh,
project
that's
that
like-
you're doing
as I-
increases because you keep
kept
finding
opening
more.
the airport.
Gotcha.
I
You
find
got
more and
that's
more
a
old
it's a
stuff.
project management term that you
Yeah,
just use.
yeah,
And I was
yeah.
thinking it had something to do with the airplane and being a mechanic.
So you weren't joking.
You know
Like
what
actually
I thought.
scoping and like looking for.
That's what I thought it was. I thought it was like one of those cracks that you have to drill.
Yeah, and like
No,
go down with the scope to look.
the mechanic in my head.
the only
going,
one.
I know. I heard. See, we're right there, Kevin.
No, I had that thought initially first too, and then I was like, oh no, he means project.
Oh,
like,
the
is getting
scope
bigger.
of the
He means like
project.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay. Great.
Nice.
Well, glad that when Nick saw that I was going to be here, and there were a couple others as well, that just the schedule didn't work out for us to have a bigger meetup here in Wichita on this layover. But I told him initially, as long as it doesn't interfere with recording a show, and we're not sure when we're going to record a show this week. And then when we found out we were going to do this today, I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we grab some lunch, and then why don't you come back with me, and we'll get caught up with what you've been up to with the Betsy's Biscuit Bomber and such, and you can be a part of the show as well. So glad you did. Hope it's not scaring you too much. Yeah, probably never see or hear
he
from
hasn't
Nick.
run away yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Yes.
Keep your eye on him.
Night is young.
Yeah, he's going to grab my toilet paper and run away.
That's right.
See you on
Don't leave
eBay
on-
tomorrow.
yeah.
And as far as me, and not a lot between the last show and today, Thursday. Just as everybody knows, I do like to do a lot of singing, and a couple of more funerals I was singing at my parish church, and always busy on the weekend there as well. And then editing the show. Had basically two shows last week, and finally got the last regular show published Tuesday. So took the day off yesterday, sort of, and here we are again. So that's pretty much it for me.
Nice.
And let's see. So with that, are you guys needing to take any kind of a physiological break?
It's probably not a terrible idea. Like a minute.
Why don't we do that? And then when everybody's back, we'll try to knock out a couple of items of feedback, and then we'll call it a day.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Be right back.
All right. Okay. As soon as she leaves, we can start talking about her. Oh, shoot. She's still here.
I heard that.
I know. She doesn't trust me. And I did that on purpose. I knew she could still hear.
Yeah.
I knew she still had her earbuds in. All right, let's take a look, see what's happening here in this chat room. I guess Captain Al had to leave. I mean, it must have been extremely late. It's 18, 19 plus 4 is 23. So it's probably after midnight wherever Al is. Did he say where he was? Is he in Bucharest? Or is he home in, I guess he's home in Manchester area. So that would be plus 4, plus 5 for where we are now. So yeah, getting close to about 11:30ish, I guess. Hey, Kelly, and Carl in Columbus, Mississippi. Matt Smith. I've heard of that guy. Let's see. I think has something to do with
family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
he runs a family show over there at the PTUK. Tim Needham, thank you for joining us again today. Working backwards here. I mentioned Kelly. Captain Al is gone now. And Landon. Jeff, you need to play the work. Hey, see, I did. Is there a song? I don't think I've heard this song. I did pick up this, though, from one of those videos.
Work, schedule, work, report time, work, scope clause, work, talk about work, approaches, fuel load, work, turbulence, work, landing, work, A fund,
Management.
union.
So we have that because a lot of times we'll use that. We'll refer to that meme. Work. I guess it's
from Living the Dream is what that's from.
living the dream.
Yeah,
Hopefully I
there
won't
it
get
is.
any kind of violation for that. Although it's been a while since I've been violated. Just to put that out there.
Maybe it's time.
Yeah. Here's one that that some of us can relate to.
If I could, I'd fly for free. La 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 la. Hee.
I don't know where I got that, but when I heard it, I thought, oh, I gotta get that.
I'll take that.
Okay. That's me, of course. All right. Are we all ready to here? Let me get the page ready in what do we call this thing again? Evernote, where you guys refer to your show notes. I believe we arranged it such that some of the ones that might apply to crew members like Steph, it might be helpful to do. So
there's like nothing for me today. I took care of all of the color blindness stuff last week.
Well, I mean,
so
but it's not
cleared out.
necessarily just
Just
doctor
kidding.
stuff here. Let me look at that.
No,
Yeah.
there's some I'll jump in on. It's good.
Okay, good. I'm still trying to figure out how to get to that folder. Here we go. So let's play the bumper.
Captain, incoming message.
Alrighty, let's start with item number 1 in the feedback folder. Good morning. I am a new subscriber to your podcast. You guys put on a great show. I was listening to your podcast welcoming back Miami Rick and wanted to comment on the Spirit A320 Neo incident. To answer the question about the braking system, normal braking is powered by the green hydraulic system, left engine driven hydraulic pump. We could also run alternate brakes off the yellow hydraulic pump. Could either be right engine driven pump or electric driven yellow pump. Both of these systems could also be powered by the PTU, the power transfer unit, the one that Rick was talking about that sounds like dogs barking, with the other system operating. The primary reason for us running the left engine is to allow the ground crew to start off loading cargo and for normal braking. Fun fact, hydraulic lines on the front of the wheel assembly are normal brakes, and hydraulic lines on the back of the wheel assembly is alternate braking. Learn something new every day.
How about that?
Reference to November 903 November Kilo, the incident aircraft. The engine was inspected and found to have no damage. The only thing that they found was a scratch on one of the high-pressure turbine blades in the core of the motor. I flew one of the first trips after that aircraft was returned to service, and we had no issues at all. Wow. I don't know why I had the impression that I think that the article that we had said that it destroyed the engine. Maybe
it looked
not.
like
Maybe.
it did.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't look good.
No.
At the SEO, you can make that assumption.
Well, that's good. Good to hear. Then that 3.4-year-old engine still has a life ahead of it. That's good. It was just an adolescent, really. Okay, at Spirit, we run all of our Airbus in a single engine taxi without APU, CETWA. That's what that stands for. Most of us don't agree with this procedure, but that's what the company wants. It's not uncommon for us to pull into a gate and leave a motor running until we get ground power. Oftentimes, it takes 2 to 5 minutes, and we're offloading passengers in the meantime. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Let's see how that happens then.
Yeah. Wow. No, even Acme doesn't really do a lot of the CETWA, or the single engine taxi without the APU. We always like to have at least 2 sources of electricity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Available.
Why not? Wow. That's crazy. No APU.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that, I mean, I don't know about Airbuses, but I don't think this is really limited to Airbuses, but usually on airplanes, when you have a single source of electrical power, the electrical system's configured and it does what's called load shedding. So some things will be shed because of that lack of extra electrical sources. So, it's interesting because I believe the 7.6 and the 7.4 as well, if you have a single electrical source, the utility buses don't work, and without the utility buses, you don't have any galley power, you don't have any in-flight entertainment, you don't have a lot of these things. So I wonder if these Airbuses here are configured differently as far as their or maybe the IFE or this is fed by some lateral bus somewhere or DC bus. I don't know.
Does Spirit have an IFE system?
Oh, maybe they don't.
There you go. Yeah. That could be it.
Jason, I have not actually flown with Spirit, so I don't know, but
I haven't
I
either.
know some things
No.
about Spirit, and I would guess maybe they don't have like seat back in-flight entertainment.
Which you don't need anymore anyway. 'Cause,
No,
everything's on
Mhm.
your iPad
Definitely
anyway.
not.
So.
Tell
I
you
was just
what.
thinking, is it like cost savings to do single engine taxi without the APU? Does the APU require
Probably
that much
does.
more?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's just a fuel savings thing, I would assume, right?
I just don't know
Yeah.
how much fuel savings that actually is for that amount of taxi time.
I mean,
With
it does
APU
add
running.
up.
Yeah.
It really does add up.
I mean, you're talking 300 pounds an hour versus is it 300 pounds an hour versus close to 1,000 pounds an hour?
Mhm. With
Okay,
the
so
other engines.
not a
So it's
terribly
not.
small
I mean,
one.
it's not insignificant. And
Mhm.
I guess the bean counters. The bean counters.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and are the engines? I mean, Part 121, the engines are replaced on condition, or is there a time cycle for the engines? Like, would there be a time factor?
I think
as
it's
well?
probably a combination. I think depending on the engine and the engine manufacturer. Yeah. So
Yeah, there's a schedule. I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, there's a schedule, specific
But it would
schedule.
make me- Go ahead. I was going to say it would make me very nervous to do the single engine taxi without another source of electricity, especially at night.
Oh,
'Cause
exactly right.
Things get really dark very fast, and people kind of tend to panic when everything goes dark.
Exactly right. And so yeah, I think the engine replacement and overhaul schedule is different. For airplanes that constantly fly ETOPS routes, so twin engine airplanes flying long distances versus an airplane like a 747 or a MD-11 where you have 3 engines, and ETOPS doesn't really apply to you as far as engines are concerned. So
Mhm.
Well, very
Hey,
interesting. Yeah.
Jeff,
Yes.
pause for a moment. Nick is
Yeah.
trying to join us, Captain
Oh,
Nick, but he
okay.
needs a new code for StreamYard because he's using a different computer.
Tell him he's out of luck.
Sorry, Nick.
Yeah. All right. Did he request the
I think
code?
he did. He said, done the code thing.
Okay. Let me see. I don't see anything here. Let me refresh my mail. Well, SteamYard has not sent anything to me. So, is he sure that he's
Are
done
we
that?
ever sure with Nick?
No. Very unsure. Try it again and let me know, and then somebody will
Liz is trying
give
to
me
help
some
him.
kind of a signal there that because it would come to this particular email address that I have that I'm looking at right at the moment, and I do not see anything that has come in since 6/19, and this has nothing to do with the daily tech news show.
No.
So let me just quickly scan everything here just to see if somehow I missed it. I'll refresh this again. Nope, don't see it. All right. Well, in the meantime, while they try to work that out, let's move on with second item in the feedback folder. VC10 Ron. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep this. I'm going to do this one on the Saturday show. So let's skip to. This might be a great time for us to cover the second part of Tanya's audio feedback, and this was oral history excerpts of NASA's Dick Underwood. And we played the first one a couple of shows ago, and here is part 2. Everybody ready for that?
We're ready.
You're ready.
Right, here we go.
Hello, APG crew and APG community. This is Tanya in New York City. Long time no feedback, so I'm going to try and make it up with this extra long feedback. Hope that's not a problem. So although the show primarily deals with aircraft flying in our atmosphere, it also seems that most people, both on the crew and the community, also have an interest in space and also an interest in photography. So that's what this feedback concerns. Back in 2003, I was on a Caribbean cruise on Celebrity Cruise Lines, and very nice. And one of the lecturers that was just happened to be booked on that cruise was a gentleman by the name of Dick Underwood, who was very prominent in the NASA photography department. And he gave 3 lectures on the cruise. And fortunately, I caught all of them because he was just so.
Apparently, I need to fast forward to the part where she stopped part 1. So just pretend like you didn't hear that on today's show. And let me get to, thank you very much for noticing that, Nick. Let's see here. I think we stopped right around 11 something or other before. Let's see. Let me play this.
And they look out the window all the time and they're not going to sleep. So we would write up a little piece of paper and hide it in the space, and they're scheduled on what one of the geoscientists around the world wanted photographs of certain areas, and you get 50 minutes of daylight and 40 minutes of darkness, and they're scheduled in a series of times that they're going to sleep.
I don't remember this part either. Hang on. Liz, can you help me? Where did I stop the other one? 11:12. Okay. It's written right there and it's highlighted. Okay, let's see. Let me try this again. That's it.
Then another problem was a lot of the geoscientists around the world wanted photographs of certain areas, and you get 50 minutes of daylight and 40 minutes of darkness, and they're scheduled in a series of times that they're going to sleep. In those days, astronauts didn't sleep because they're looking at this Earth out there. No one had ever seen this magnificent thing before, and they look out the window all the time, and they're not going to sleep. So we would write up a little piece of paper and hide it in the spacecraft. I call it photography for insomniacs. So during the sleep cycles, I tell them every time they'd get to places where I'd gotten letters from scientists all over the world wanting photographs of that area. The flight controllers couldn't understand why these pictures came back during sleep cycles. Nobody was sleeping out there. So that became a system through the rest of the program. We put the cameras on spacecraft, and this piece of paper was in there. One astronaut knew where it was, so they get the pictures from that. Got a lot of great photos when, in theory, they're sleeping, not supposed to take photos on the later flights. Bergen, tell us how you train the astronauts. This is Tanya. There's another little excerpt cut out here, and we're back in. I remembered I'd always, after a while when I realized the value of the pictures, would tell some of them, you know, when you get back, you're going to be a national hero, you're going to get a parade in your hometown and maybe a parade in Washington, and you're going to have dinner at the White House, and you're going to talk to a joint session of Congress. All through this time, all these computers in Building 30 are going to be punching information into big, thick books about what went on in this system, that system, the other system, and so on. The only people who are ever going to look at those books are probably guys going for a PhD in aerospace engineering or history or this sort of thing. And they've got 1 billion pieces of data on thousands and thousands of these books. That's their only value. But these photographs, if you get great photos, they'll live forever. Your key to immortality is in the quality of the photographs and nothing else. Some of the guys would say, "Oh, Dick, you're crazy." And then the next day they'd say, "You know, you're right. I'll get you great pictures." So that was part of the motivation. And today those photos will live forever. They might say, "Who took it? Neil Armstrong or Jim Lovell or all these guys took the picture." They'll live forever. Charles, quote unquote, Pete Conrad Jr. photographed this famed UFO. We thought it was a defect in the film. It was in 3 photographs. It was during the debriefing afterwards that Pete said, "What did you think of that UFO?" I said, "What UFO?" He said, "Well, I took 3 pictures of it on this one roll." I said, "Gee, I thought you were taking pictures of the S-band antenna on the Agena and they were out of focus." It was a very definitive vehicle, not an artifact of any kind. It was a machine that was built by some humans somewhere in time, and we couldn't figure it out. We had no idea what it was or anything. This went on for years. Every time I'd roll that roll of film from Gemini 11, I'd think, what the devil is that? We have no idea what it is because we hadn't anything that we launched that looked like that. So maybe there are UFOs or something. Then the Soviets released a Fermis data and the data on their protons, which were very, very big vehicles. I looked at the pictures in AvWeek, first release protons, and said, "Gee, looks a bit like this thing on Gemini 11. So I go by it, and yes, it has the same general shape. Then I got the Fermis for the protons and the Fermis for Gemini 11. And when Pete took the pictures, they were 4 miles apart over southern Africa at the time. So that's what we had. but I guess it was 10 years before. Every time I roll that roll, I'm scratching my head. And we never mentioned it to anybody, at that point, that this thing was in there and nobody in the outside world caught it at that point. It was sort of like on Apollo 11. Nobody wondered why we never released any pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon, because there weren't any. But we were told, don't mention it. And nobody in the news media picked this up. I can't figure that out to save my life. Why every picture you released was Buzz Aldrin, because Buzz was mad at Neil and didn't take his picture. Got hundreds of the other 11 guys walked on the moon, none of number one. Even Public Affairs Office for a while thought of, why don't we say this picture by the flag is Armstrong? How do you know? You can't see his face or anything. I said, well, there's some 9-year-old kid out there who's a space groupie, and he knows every aperture and wire and seam in a spacesuit. The day after you publish it, the New York Times is going to have a letter from a 9-year-old kid saying, no, you're wrong. That's Buzz Aldrin. Well, don't mention it. So that's the way that sort of worked for years. Nobody brought that idea up. A lot of things weren't mentioned and got away with from that standpoint. I guess it was Shuttle 9 when the photo editor from AvWeek in Space Technology was looking at some of those pictures. It was in a high inclination, one picture, and they were all cleared by the military. He said, what's in this picture? Snow on the ground, little circles spread out, almost like a spider web. I said, oh, that's a clear violation of the SALT, quote-unquote, Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty by the Soviet Union. Those missiles aren't supposed to be there. Well, of course, they put it on the cover of the magazine, and everybody from the Secretary of Defense on down the line wants to be put in front of a firing squad for telling him that. I said, the man asked a question. You guys released the photographs. You said there was nothing of value in them. If you didn't want the world to know that we know the Soviets violate their treaties and violate all treaties, you should have restricted the photo. But I had a bad reputation in DOD and the Pentagon for a number of years after that. Another interesting one was on Apollo 8, where William Andrews overexposed a roll of film by 10 stops, and they were the first pass behind the moon. It was a Super Royal X-Band ASA 10,000 film. He exposed it at 64. The magazines were all coded, and he put the wrong one on because he told me when he was coming back from the moon that he was tired and put the wrong mag on. This is Tanya, another little excerpt removed here, and we're back in. So I guess it's 2:00 in the morning, and they're on their way back from the moon, first thing on the way back, and my phone rings, and Capcom says, hey, Bill Anders wants to talk to you. So I hop on my bike in Nassau Bay, drive through the night into Mission Control, and Bill puts it, what if I used a Super Royal X-Pan like it was plus X? I said, there ain't no what ifs. You done it because it's 3:00 in the morning here. You're 200,000 miles away. We talk what ifs in meetings and in the real live world. You've done it. He says, well, yes, I put the wrong mag on the pictures on the far side of the moon and all this. What can you do? I said, well, you destroyed the latent image. Well, think about it, but thanks for telling us. Either we're going to process the roll of film in advance and know what we're going to get one as clean as a window pane, or we'll think about it. Then the next day, brought it up with our photo scientist, who was a PhD at a Rochester Institute of Technology, who had scholarships from Kodak, and he said, yeah, I remember reading something like that when I was a student of massive overexposure of film. Then we went to the Kodak research. They searched their papers. They went back into the early 20s paper that C.E.K. Mies did when he was chief of research at Eastman. For about 40 years, he was chief of research. He's the father of color film, I'd say, and the father of quality control. Probably the #1 photographic genius in all of history. Dr. Mies did it with a Verichrome film, which doesn't record red very well. Your red Ozarka on that cup, if I had Verichrome took the picture, it looked like a clean cup, dead in the red, we used to say about Verichromes. He did the same thing and ran some experiments with it, came up with some ideas and wrote, no one will need this technique. Houston, we need this technique 50 years later, 40 years later, 43 years later, I guess. No, 50 years later. What we did, we ran some experiments out of our aircraft to Ellington Field by vast overexposures, and we bleached the latent image in the film with the bleach of all that silver. Then we dissolved out all this bleached silver. So at that point, you get a clear sheet of film, clear as that window pane. And for a very, very long period of time, we developed a molecular type of image that's in a photograph that you and I have never used because we don't have time to expose it. That went on for 8 hours. Then we fixed, washed, and dried it. We got some grainy but magnificent pictures of the far side of the moon at that point. So we had to go back to this guy who'd ran an experiment 5 years before I was born to have him rescue us. A man from his grave rescued us at that period of time. So you don't want to turn your back on your predecessors in your profession. They've done some remarkable things. Those pictures exist today because of that. During the whole process, it's in the dark and Andrew's in there. What are you doing now? Well, we're trying to save your butt at this point. We're not going to lose this roll of film. Thanks for telling us. If it had gone through the normal process without you telling us that night, it would have been totally destroyed. We wouldn't have had all these great pictures of the far side of the moon from the first orbits of the far side of the moon by human beings. So, looking back over your career with NASA, what are you most proud of? Underwood. Most proud of in my own? Bergen. Yes. Underwood. Well, I guess the fact that I was involved in the Apollo project and very closely with those who used the camera to bring back the pictures and being the first human being to see them. Like on 17, that one full Earth? More people have seen that photo than any in the history of mankind, and I saw it first. I was the first person to see that photograph. It was wet in a processor in Building 8. When I saw it, I said, boy, that's it. And it was on 17, the last flight, because they went at night and went translunar over Madagascar, so they had a full lit Earth because of where they were headed for on the moon. It was the only circumstance that brought that picture. And the fact that I kept telling Jack Schmidt, who is a geologist, that will be the classic picture. Make sure you get it after you go translunar, And Jack worked it into his schedule and got the series of them because that one's at 28,000 miles. That's a perfect picture, and he aimed it beautifully. And I cut the glass slides and I got the big glass slide projector, which weighed about 50 pounds, and I brought it on home. I wanted the first people outside that gate, this is Tanya, he's meaning the NASA gate, back in, to see someone walking on the moon would be my children and my wife. I walked in the door of the house and my kids are having breakfast, and my eldest son, who's now a banker in New York, turns to his brothers and sisters and says, "Uh-oh, Dad's going to show us some more of that junk from space." Laughter. So that's the generation gap. So that was the way it worked. But they got to see them before anybody else did, before even PAO. That's Public Affairs Office. Bergen, what a privilege. Underwood, yes, junk from space. So this is Tanya again. This is not where the oral history ends, but I think I'll stop it here because I'm sure this is way too long already. But once again, I'll include the URL for Jeff and or Liz to include in the show notes if they so desire. I really hope you enjoyed this and hope to see some of you soon at one meetup or another along the way. Cheers.
Thanks, Tanya. That was awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time to do that. That was a lot of work, I'm sure. And as she said, I will have the link to all of that in the show notes, ITSN. And I don't know, you smell something weird? Oh, look who's joined us. It's Captain Nick.
It's the smell of a new Airbus.
Oh, boy.
Wait a minute.
There he is.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Rick. Lovely to see you, mate.
Hey, what's going on, Nick? Everything good?
Yeah, they're grounding Airbuses as fast as they can build them. So I don't know what's going on.
It's not just the Airbuses.
I was thinking about putting that news item for our show that we're going to do Saturday morning, but let's just talk about it now. I guess the A340 had already been slated for retirement. Is that correct? And then they kind of extended it a little bit, and now I guess it's all kaput.
Yeah, you know what it's like in the airline industry, Jeff. And hi, everybody. Sorry for my late arrival. It's all predicated by demand, and they make plans, but demand things vary all the time. And so the 340 was sort of lingering on as, 747s have been in other airlines. The big fours have had their day, but they can still make money. But this current downturn in the industry has sounded the death knell, and so I think it's a good time to put the old girl to bed, and she'll sit and be made into more bag tags,
key fobs and such. Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, everyone have A340 earrings and trinkets, belly button things. Yeah.
I was just looking at my junk drawer over here because I think I actually have some of those
in your junk drawer. It should be in your prized treasure chest. Yeah,
I must have given them out as gifts already because I don't see it.
It's in a rubbish bin, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
Hey,
girls
Nick, you
will
look
be
awfully
bedazzled by A340 bits before long.
Hey, Nick, you look awfully dressed up there. You just coming back from some kind of a special event?
Yeah, I've been lecturing, as I sometimes do, this time at RAF Marham, just up the road here, where the British have won A3, sorry, the F-35B, oh God, get it right, Lightning II is being introduced into the United Kingdom. They've got 15 of them, I think, there now. So, in fact, I was coming back from having lectured the aviation enthusiasts that are there. And if any of you are listening, they've all got my card. Hopefully, a few of them will tune in. It was great to meet you all. Fabulous audience.
Is it him?
Back to the pub round and staying the night. Okay. I was right in the going through the approach lights in the little country lane, and an F-35 did an approach over the top of us, nice. And it looked fabulous and sounded brilliant.
Oh wow,
nice.
Hey Nick, could you do me a favor when you're talking? Can you like hold your arm up and like off to the left a little bit? Just kind of like rabbit ears, like your signal is kind of out.
Yeah, I didn't think the Wi-Fi would be great. I can just reduce my camera definition a bit. That might help. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that'll probably help. Cut down on the bandwidth bandwidth requirement.
All right. So I didn't think the pub Wi-Fi would be brilliant, but there you go.
Oh no, is this where you are in the pub?
Yeah, it's a very nice country pub. They're having a gourmet evening downstairs. The rooms, but it has been a bit noisy, so my apologies if you hear a lot of carousing going on down below.
Nope, the only carousing we hear is in your room, and that's all we're going to say.
We're going to leave that in there.
Carousing, huh? Interesting.
So, Nick, if you don't mind, I'd like to play this piece of feedback, or not play it, but cover it, since you're here with us tonight. This came in from Dylan and Nicole, and they're referring, or he is referring to the Plaintail sounds like a drag in episode 407. And the response, or the email here says, loved the episode, watched a new movie called Six Underground on Netflix, and in the movie their base is the Boneyard at Mojave, and there is a Convair 990 in the scene. You can tell by the speed pods. Speed pods. Love your show. Okay, Nick, over.
You cut out there. I had speed pods and then nothing.
Yeah. Love your show was the last thing.
Oh, well, that's great. Isn't that fantastic? I mean, I didn't know a lot about the Convair 990 until I did some research, and now a lot of us know about it. What an amazing airplane. It was even faster than the 747, and that takes some doing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That really does.
Is it really that it was the 990 because it was 990 feet per second? Is that how it went, or was that just a marketing thing?
No, I think the 880 was the original. So I'm assuming that when they got a slightly faster version, they called it the 990.
It was just convenient to up the numbers by one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Seems like a trendy thing to do for airlines, doesn't it?
Yeah, really. Wow. No, but those pods are just unbelievable. It's just really cool looking.
Definitely.
Okay. Also, one more.
Love to see it. Right?
We squeeze one more in.
That's what she said.
Item number 2. I always enjoy.
That was not a great combination.
That was very disturbing.
Moving on. VC10 Ron writes in, being a keen radio amateur, I regularly use the local Volmet transmission on 126.595 megahertz, London information, to check my antenna if my antenna is still up. Haha. It's quite useful, as I know its average signal strength is around an S9. This is all stuff that I do not understand. A quick check.
9, S9.
Oh, okay. A quick check on the Volmet frequency confirms everything is up and running. I was a little confused the other morning, though, when I turned to it and heard the computerized lady's voice stating that the dew point was -0. How can you get -0? Surely it would just be 0. Have you guys and girls ever heard the dew point been referred to as a -0? Any reason for this, or am I just hearing things? I know Captain Nick is a keen radio ham. Maybe he'll know. Thanks. I think that was VC10 Ron, aka Golf. Is that a 0 or an O?
I think that's a 0.
Golf 0 Mike Bravo Victor, Class A radio amateur in North Yorkshire, UK.
Well, that's not that far from where I am now. I'm by the wash, which is no indication of my personal hygiene, but just a bit that sticks in where the sea gets in. I was intrigued myself to know why you get a -0. I went, that's a bit confusing. But I did, in fact, inquire of a friend of mine who put a -0 in there. And apparently, a temperature or dew point between -0.5 centigrade and -0.1 is encoded as M00, whilst a temperature, i.e. -0, whilst a temperature or dew point between 0.0 centigrade and +0.4 centigrade is encoded as 00. So it's a form of rounding up or rounding down. So it's slightly below 0 if it goes -0. And if you don't get a minus, it's slightly above. But it's all within sort of 0.9 of a degree of 0 itself.
So the computerized voice doesn't really have the logic to understand that anything, whether it's minus or +0, is just 0. It just says
well, that's true, but also in the written code, if 0 in the written ATIS, it'll mean that it's ever so slightly below 0.
All right. Very good.
And
well,
thank
I'm glad
you very
came
much
and
to MIB, who is in the town, did that for me.
Oh, very nice. Thank you, MIB. All right. So let's see. I think we're at the point now where we might want to go ahead and stop part 1, and then we'll pick it up on Saturday morning with part 2. Anything y'all would like to add or subtract? I guess you can't really do that.
Too late.
Before we call it quits for tonight?
Well, I personally would like to add my enormous appreciation for Rick to coming back to the show. I'm really looking forward to having him on as a regular, and I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Myself.
I'm sorry. We're having trouble, Nick, with your signal. We're walking all over you. We don't mean to.
Oh, that's okay. I'm used to it. Do you want me to say it again?
Yes, please. And say it with more feeling this time.
Okay. Rick, I love you, man. I love you. I'm so pleased you're back.
I love you too, Nickster. No, really, I'm really happy to be back, and it's gonna be good. I'm happy that it's gonna be easier. We're all sort of in the same kind of time zone. I'm no longer on the other side of the world, and I'm looking forward to doing this. It's gonna be good. It's gonna
be great.
Excellent.
Great. All right. Really don't like the way he's grabbing that microphone. So let's go ahead and end this thing before we have some kind of a complaint from YouTube and Facebook. Anyway, with that, thanks everyone for joining us on part 1. And we're going to go ahead and say that this is over. And now I'm going to hit the stop button on my recording. There we go.
Should I stop mine too, or do you want it to go for another?
Oh, you actually
27
recording?
hours?
Are we on?
There you go. Another 27 hours.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. A couple little Skyping issues all around, and probably from our end as well, because I'm
it
having
seemed
to
pretty
use
good
my.
from.
Oh,
Yeah,
was it?
seemed good
Okay.
from my end. I didn't notice
Okay.
too much.
Was mine Skyping at all, or
No,
Just a
I didn't
couple of
notice any.
times.
Just a
Okay.
couple times. I wonder if it was on your end, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, the iPhone is a hotspot, so
Gotcha.
sometimes it's not perfect, but it was better than the hotel Wi-Fi, because when Liz and I were Liz and Nick and I were talking pre-show, the hotel Wi-Fi just was not cutting it at all. It was not good. So that's the way it goes sometimes. So
that's it.
Hey, everybody in the chat room, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Anything you'd like to say, Nick, before?
No.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Great having you, man. A lot of fun, hearing
Hello,
about DC3.
goodbye, Nick.
Hey, Nick, good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Mutual name, what do you call it? Yeah, shoot.
Appreciation
That's
Society.
it. Appreciation. Thank you. God. These early mornings sometimes get to me. This old man. It's before you know it, the coronavirus. It's going to be all over. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. Everybody on the crew, go ahead and stay with me.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Everybody.
See you later.
Later.